countries in the world. As you can see, number one, the United States, number two, China, then you've got Brazil, Argentina. The key thing there is if you want to go get corn from anybody, you better go to the United States, Brazil, and Argentina, because they're the only ones that have any to export. The rest of it is being consumed in the countries where it's produced. That's going to continue. This is global consumption of corn for feed, and what the Department of Agriculture breaks out is food, seed, and industrial uses. And that FSI, food, seed, industrial, is largely ethanol, certainly in the U.S. But we're using corn now to make plastics and makes a lot of things. All of those things are used in the corn. But as you can see, we've really grown that area of food, seed, and industrial in the last few years. This is a change in U.S. corn consumption for feed and then for food, seed, and industrial. You can see we haven't added much consumption in the U.S. for corn for feed. It's all been added for food, seed, and industrial, mainly ethanol. This is consumption of corn for feed and for food and seed industrial uses. You can see it's ethanol that's been the growth one down there at the bottom. Ending stocks of corn in the U.S. and the rest of the world. We're the biggest carrier of stocks at the end of the year. Certainly we're the biggest carrier of stocks you can go try to get to import. The other countries in the world carry stocks, but you can't go get them because they need them for their own consumption. And you can see that all of the global total in the U.S. is going down in stocks as we continue to use up more than we're consuming. Than we're producing. This is U.S. corn use for ethanol production. Gone from 13.4 million tons in 1998-99 up to estimated this year 78.7 million metric tons. That's a lot of corn. About 20-25% of our production now is going to be diverted into ethanol production. And that's, it made sense. The U.S. is very much energy dependent. We need to bring this in. We're, in fact, for foreign policy reasons, for a lot of other reasons, people said we need to be less reliant on the Middle East and rely on people like Hugo Chavez and Venezuela, so let's increase their internal production. And so their incentives are there to make ethanol out of whatever you could, and of course corn is the best one to use because it's high in starch content. We produce a lot of it, it's easily transportable, and we have now plants all over the Midwest. You can believe this, Iowa, which is the largest corn producing state in the United States, is predicted to become a net corn importer in the next year. So we are making a lot of ethanol. The problem is we are also driving down global corn ending stocks. You can see our stocks to use ratio this year is going to be about 13%. And that's one of the lowest levels ever for that. So that's why we have corn at $6. The market is effectively saying we have to have that corn for other uses. We can't just have it go into ethanol. So the only way we can do that is get the corn price high enough where ethanol doesn't make sense. And we're having some plants are closing in the U.S. But still, there is a profit making ethanol at this price level in the U.S. and we're continuing to make it. Now, I don't know what the policymakers are going to do. I can tell you that last December when the Congress passed the New Energy Act and set up these mandates of going to 36 billion gallons of ethanol by the year 22, or biofuels by 2022, they capped the amount, I believe, at 14 for corn, 14 billion that could come from corn, and the rest had to come from either biodiesel or from second-generation biofuels made out of biomass. They said that starting in 2009, we have to start using X amount of second-generation biofuel made from, whether it be switchgrass or wood products or anything else other than food. That only the Congress can do that. They are mandating that we start using something we don't know how to make. We cannot make it. And we're going to have 20 billion gallons of stuff that we're supposed to be using by the year 2022 that we don't know how to make. It's like the Congress's solution to traffic problems would mandate that car companies all produce hovercraft in 5 years. They don't know how to make hovercraft either, but Congress does it. They mandate something. And until that happens, we're going to use corn to do it. But now there's a lot of people stepping back. Even in January, when the Congress came back in session after passing the energy bill in December, people started looking at it and saying, maybe we overstepped what we should do. And there's now more and more people saying that because we're getting the head of the UN, we're getting the World Bank, the head of the IMF, the head of the World Food Organization, and others pointing the finger and saying that one of the major reasons for our food prices rising around the world, subsidized biofuel production in the United States, Europe, here in Southeast Asia, Brazil, Argentina, and elsewhere. And I don't know what the policymakers are going to say about it, but right now the situation in the U.S. is that the Energy Act specified that a panel would be set up by the National Science Foundation to develop a criteria for waiving the mandates so that we don't have to use the ethanol that the Congress said under certain conditions. The National Science Foundation has just begun to start looking at that. But, right now, the President has the authority, most likely, to step in and say, and waive the mandates. Do I think he's going to do that? Not unless there's a crisis here real soon, because I don't think he wants to waive it prior to the November election and thereby undermine his party's chance of winning the White House, particularly votes in rural areas. But that's going to be a good question. I'll get to this later in the year. Let's assume we have a drought. What happens? We can increase corn yields. This is the average yield for corn in the United States versus the rest of the world. As you can see, our corn yields are growing faster than the rest of the world. But why is that? Well, we're the best place probably in the world to grow corn. We've got a wonderful soil, perfect climate for it, good rainfall normally. We do it. But the main thing is we're now using really advanced biotechnology, producing corn that's herbicide resistant. It's got a gene in it that helps the corn be resistant to the corn rootworm, to be resistant to the corn borer, a worm. We're moving pretty fast toward getting a gene in this. It's drought tolerance. We're getting yields that are phenomenal. I mean, farmers that grow 175, 80 bushels of corn per acre with the new varieties move to these new stacked varieties where they've got all three genes in there, and the next year grow 220 bushels. We're getting yields. And, what the ethanol or the corn industry in the U.S. says, and there's some validity to it, is that we're going to increase yields fast enough in the future to meet feed, food, and industrial demand because it's just the way we're going to grow yields. But the rest of the world hasn't moved there yet. Argentina's using biotech crops. The Canadians are. There's very little of it grown in Europe. The Philippines is growing biotech corn. But the rest of the world needs to get this technology and use it. You can greatly expand production. But there's too many countries saying, oh, we're scared of biotechnology. You ought to be more scared of starving to death. And I think that's why we're going to see now, in fact, there's a lot of news articles in the last few days of countries saying, well, we better just adopt this biotechnology. We've got a crisis on our hands. And I think that's going to solve a lot of the problem over time. A lot of you in this region are bringing in distillers' grain. This is U.S. exports of distillers' grain. And you can see that we have substantially increased our exports of distillers' grain. On the opposite side of that, we substantially reduced our exports of corn gluten feed. The reason being is that Europe wouldn't approve the varieties for importation and consumption of all of our corn varieties. As a result, what they call adventitious presence, if you've got more than 0.1% of any unapproved variety in corn gluten feed shipped to Europe, then the cargo is seized, either sent back or destroyed. So nobody is willing to take the risk of sending it to Europe, and no one in Europe is willing to take the risk of importing it. So Europe has fenced itself into a corner because now it couldn't get our corn. And last year it hadn't approved biotech events that were being grown in Argentina. So